new vicar at St. Charles Borromeo. If you don't know my background, I was a priest at St. Sebastian's for 4 years in Akron. Just came here about 5 months ago. Born of New York originally, and grew up in Hudson, St. Mary's. So, without further ado, the title that came to my mind was Living the Sign. Because marriage isn't private, marriage, isn't public. I mean, Christian marriage is a sign of God's goodness and God's love and his union with us for the good of the world. So by the way, I think better when I write, so forgive if I'm reading you a talk or using notes. I think better the way, just fair warning. I always say that I'm not good at sharing anything that I can't relate to. I'm just not. I'm great at explaining what I've tasted or experienced myself. And I say this because I'm married, so I can relate to you. I'm always saying that this is my marriage. This is as real to me as your marriage, consecrated marriage. So we can't all relate. And anyone we're all here, we found our calling. We haven't found the answer to having a perfect life. We found God made us this way, and He led us to a spouse to say, this is how I formed you, and this is how you're going to grow in your life with Christ, and guide our way towards heaven. We have a ring to remind us. I mean, that is always the one reminder that we are married is the ring. The collar is something else, but it's not so different. And it was strange. When I was thinking about this, I found myself opening the catechism. I haven't done that freely in a few years, pick up the catechism to read something. So I looked up some points about this. And all these points about marriage, I want you to know that I'm also reflecting on my marriage as well, my priesthood, as I'm talking about your marriage. Interesting thought. Maybe you have thought about this or haven't. Maybe priests do. So we're not always wearing this, okay? We're not always advertising priesthood when we go out in public. And I think about this on my day off when I'm going to the grocery store, or when I'm getting my hair cut, or when I'm not wearing my collar. I wonder, are people knowing my priesthood without knowing I'm a priest? I think about that, And if I were to, at times in the haircut place, they'll say, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a priest," And I wonder if I were to tell someone that didn't know I'm a priest, would they think, "Oh, that makes sense"? And why shouldn't that reality be different for married people, for husband and wife? Why shouldn't it be a similar question or the similar reality that people would know from your security, from your peace, from your love, that you have a spouse, that you have that married love that you hang on to, that you take with you. So I don't think about that. Yeah. So the vocation is, as I heard once, it's not black or white, it's Jesus. Which marriage are you called to? That's someone told me one time. Are you called to black or white? Are you called to this or this? No, you're called to know Jesus and to let Him love you, love Him in return, be His love, show His love. That's our vocation. So that's centered around what marriage, how it's going to work, how it's going to work well, and most definitely for my marriage. So in a concrete way, priests do show the marriage that you're signifying. In a concrete way, priests show his total commitment and self-gift to his people. And it's intimate, the intimacy of celebrating the sacraments together. The priest gets to call you his family as a spouse and give advice as a spiritual father. And I hope that every priest hopes that the people that I'm married to will know Jesus' love for them in just who we are. That's what I hope people can know. And it's the fruits of that marriage that we can be. From the love that we discover through our marriage, through him, we can meet a total stranger, right? And with that same love, be Jesus' love for them. So let's break down a couple catechism points. I'm not going to explain which ones, but the idea of the indissoluble bond of marriage. Have you ever heard that before? Indissolubility. It's saying that through Jesus dying and rising from the dead, he restored that perfect, unbreakable covenant and bond that God had with us, and that man was meant to have with woman, husband, and wife. That's what Jesus restored. Whereas the first man and the woman who screwed up this marriage between God and one another, they blamed one another, they hid from one another, they objectified one another, dominated one another. So Jesus came to restore that. And that's the bond that the grace of Christian husband and wife rely on. Even if you can't explain it, you just know it's true. And if nothing else to show the secular world, is showing that the grace of a growing sacrament in him is that marriage can not only be alive for 50, 60, a lifetime of years, it can grow. And not just be a burden and not just be, I'm Catholic, so I don't believe in divorce, but I hate you. We're meant to be a sign for the secular world that it's God's work. Using the love of a husband and wife that lasts fruitfully an entire lifetime until death do us part. That is a sign, right? And another point is that when I do some weddings, even a couple that's been married civilly in a beautiful way for 10 years, they have children, or a couple that's been together since they were high school sweethearts, they still haven't experienced marriage. I don't know if you can relate to that, is that you really become this whole new identity together. It's not magic, it's grace. And I've talked to someone recently that said, after he and his wife took their vows, in that moment of after all the days of my life, they felt grace, they felt their life change. Does somebody else here, experience that without explaining that life changed when you're married? Yeah. Amen. I couldn't quite explain when I was ordained, but I knew after a certain prayer that something came to life in me, something was different. I've been unpacking it ever since, but it's been real. And this is a beautiful ideal. At a Catholic wedding, the ideal, most beautiful celebration of Catholic wedding is two Catholics that become one flesh through their promises to God before the altar, and then shortly after, they approach the altar and they receive Jesus for the first time in his flesh, for the first time as one flesh. Oh, and that is beautiful. Because that's the Sacrament of Unity. Receiving the Sacrament of Unity with Jesus as spouses, that's something that that's meant to nourish us. It's in the same way that we were baptized. Everything we received was an outflowing of Jesus' life within us, our calling, our identity, our relationship with God through baptism. And so every other sacrament either fulfills or strengthens or heals that. So no one is called to be alone. People might live a life alone, but nobody is. So the sacrament of marriage, holy orders, religious life, it's fulfilling that calling of finding God's love through baptism. So why can't, and this will take a lot of attention, I think, in prayer, to say that every time we receive the Eucharist and the healing and the grace that we need, that it's for like the strength and the life of our marriage. Yeah. Not only becoming more ourselves, but being strengthened and healed in hardness of heart or through fears or uncertainties. When we go to reconciliation and we're humbled by how much God loves us, His mercy is so great that should feed into our reconciliation even more with our spouse. And that's why Jesus gives us these graces of these sacraments. He loves us to be perfect. He knows we're not. We don't deserve these great graces, but He gives it to us. And it's because our relationship with God is either growing or it's dying. It's kind of sobering, but it's true. I will say, for one, we cannot lose the grace we've been given. So it's a good reminder regarding our baptism, our faith, our conversion, and our marriage. We cannot lose what we've been given. But however, that's true. Our relationship with God is either being kindled and growing, or it's being forgotten and dying. So think about that with our marriage. That our whole life, it's either withering and staying the same, being snuffed, or it's growing. And of course, growing requires pain, challenges, surrender, and surrender. Yeah, for all of us. And not only for regarding just ourselves. We don't get married to change ourselves. We get married to become more ourselves. I heard a talk once about marriage where the woman said, "Men, your wives aren't carburetors. You can't fix them." Which I like. Women, your husbands aren't tools that you can change. All of us we showed up, we gave God ourselves, and they're not ours to fix. Our spouse is ours to love, to be here. But there's one Lord, there's one Savior. Our spouse belongs to Him before us. They're gifts. So, yes, we commit to becoming more ourselves. But at the end of the day, He has to be everything and make up for everything they lack. Yeah. And I guess going on that Jesus will never force us to come to Him for help. He loves us too much to do that. So our work is coming to Him. And I think that maybe one of the best ways to just show up with our needs to Jesus and as husband and wife is just to come to Mass. I think that's I like to say that praying together is just surrendering to God together. So maybe coming to Mass and actually praying the Mass together, not even have to think about us, just being there together for God at the altar. Maybe that's the best way. And what I was thinking, what I read about, again, the Catechism somewhat, is the connection between the altar and the bed with marriage, that marriage between spouses is consummated forever the night of the marriage. Yeah. And then Jesus' marriage to us for His church was consummated when He offered His body to us on the cross. And then He offers His body for us continually every time on the altar. So just to be aware that there's something about renewing our marriage, and at bed with one another, and also offering yourselves to the altar for Jesus. You can pray about that one, but there's definitely a correlation with rededicating yourselves at the altar every time you come to Mass together. And same with the priest, that he's called to offer himself at the altar. I don't always think about that, but it's true. Offer yourself at the altar. And a daily goal, when we talk about marriage, even marital embrace, trust and commitment. I mean, when we talk about marriage, we're talking about fully committing yourself, fully trusting the other, and being trusted by the other. And so, yeah, the lifelong goal is full disclosure and total trust. Granted, when you're living together, so you have to be, you're with each other all the time, so you can't hide anything, not really. But it's still a choice to share yourself and hide nothing of your soul, what's going on in your heart. For priests, it's up to them how much they choose to share themselves. It's up to them. We do our best. I do my best. And then I think also a mark of this marriage that we're celebrating, not civil marriage, not living together, is fidelity. This is a word that doesn't make sense in movies. It only makes sense in regards to our faithfulness to Jesus and our faithfulness to our spouse are interconnected. We have a great gift. I'm very spoiled in being a priest in a similar way, is that the work of the most important thing in our life depends on Jesus providing and delivering. And so in marriage, our relationship with him and trusting him and letting him deliver is directly related to us being a good husband, a good wife, being humble, being forgiving, being charitable, and self-giving. We can't do any of these things without ourselves. So we should rejoice that we cannot do this marriage thing on our own steam, that we need him every day. Otherwise, we can still do it, but it doesn't have to be just work. It can be charity and love and freedom from ourselves. One of my mottos for this year, for life, is we might change, our moods might change, days might change. Life is this. We have different challenges, but Jesus doesn't change. So, our trust in him, who does not change and is there so mercifully and perpetually for us, I think that is the ground, that's the ground that we stand on, is I trust you. You know, we trust our spouse for obvious reasons. Of course we do. But at the end of the day, he hasn't changed. And I think that's the calm water that I walk on through almost everything. And a last indispensable way of living, I have more to say, but another great point to make about living the sign of marriage is the domestic church. It sounds like something we'd hear just in class, but I guess what does it look like? The domestic church is a Christian family home. And for parents, parents who have children, kids reveal a lot about their parents. It's beautiful, and it's also, oh, that's on me. It's both and. And I know that's also true about, the pastor and the parish. I know that's probably also true as well in some way. But more about kids, that they reveal a lot about who their parents are. Start with the fact there are no perfect parents, and there are no perfect children, except Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. We can go off on a tangent there, but let's not. But we can strive to raise and foster children as best we can of all their lives and all our life. We can try to foster children who know their dignity, know their value, and know they're loved. We can try to foster that to the best of our ability and the best of his help. My own nephews, they're 7. They're spoiled. But I know they know they're loved. They're spoiled, but I know they're thankful. I know they know they're loved. I'm thankful for that. And if your children know they're loved, then they'll know how to love others. Like without you looking, they will see that this kid's feelings matter. And they'll see that he and she, is loved by their parents or deserves to be loved. That's something that we cannot fake. And things like faith, hope, and charity, which come out just in who we are. We can't teach it to our kids if they don't feel it in us. If we don't have faith, trust in God, if we don't have hope for the future, patience in life, if we're bitter about picking them up from school or washing the dishwasher, or whatever, we can tell them all about it, but we can't teach it unless we are living it ourselves. Yeah. And maybe we will know how we're doing in terms of raising little disciples, raising Christians and our sons and daughters in what they do when we're not forcing them, and what they do when we're not there. And what we even hear about them. What we hear about our children from others, that is our goal, that we don't have to force them to do so. Force them to pray. But I guess, the long and short of being a witness for others in the world is just being good Christians ourselves. And as I said, we're called to be Jesus. And I like to boil down a vocation as simple as, in what is the fullest way for you to need Jesus, to be everything, to find him, and to be him? So, it's marriage. It's marriage. And so, the most important aspect of the identity, our vocation, it should have an effect on others. And I guess that's bringing the full circle that, yes, in one way or another, if this is our goal, growing in love, needing Jesus for this, it's going to affect others. So I guess giving ourselves the freedom to be so vulnerable out in the world and to take risks to show his love, knowing that it's not as safe as our own comfort of our marriage. So I think security is something that we show as a sign, because the world is full of insecurities. Yes, the world is full of insecurities. But if I'm going out into the world knowing that I am fully loved, I'm fully understood, I know that I'm trusted, I know that I have a spouse that I can share absolutely everything with. They know all the dirt on me and love me regardless. And I cannot lose this relationship. That's a lot of security. It's just being thankful for this. And maybe that's the security that a person who's living chaste love can be in the world. And holding on to the friendship that you cannot lose. So our duties in married love is showing that marriage is a gift, and showing that, commitment is not a trap. Yeah, let's show the world that commitment is not a trap. Commitment is actually freedom. It's freedom to forget ourselves, to be who we are, because we're not entrapped within ourselves. And that love isn't just always getting what we want and what makes us smile. Love is denying, or both of us denying ourselves out of love for the other. That is love, and something you hang on to that will not die. And that persevering in love, persevering requires surrender, not control. Hang on to that one. Surrender. And that being charitable, being meek, being humble, being forgiving does not make sense except because of Jesus. And I think that is how countercultural we can be, is doing what doesn't make any sense in the world and in the workplace, but only because of who he is to us and the love that he's given us in our marriage. So I guess come back to the interesting question that I said earlier. When I go out in the world without my cleric son, I won't take it off. When I go out in the world without my cleric son, will people still know the love of my priesthood? I don't know. I'm trying. And likewise, when you go out in the world, not wearing your wedding gowns and tuxes, and when you go out in the world and it's just you, and all we have is our ring, will people know the love of your marriage? Nonetheless. And if we're all thinking right now, that's all good and well, but I'm not that good father. And if we're all thinking the fact that, okay, we're good, but we're not that great. That's the point. I think that is also the point, is that we're not done. And that we're on a journey, and it's called a vocation, and it's meant to take an entire lifetime. The idea is using our vocation in our being imperfect and growing and refusing to give up and refusing to not commit to growing. It takes our entire lifetime of needing him and loving one another. So yeah, if we're always feeling like we're falling short, doesn't that pull us to always want to be better? Which leads us to him. So in our marriage, may we look at the needs of our spouse, be thankful for them, and in all this, need Jesus. Find him, be him, and not only through your marriage, but for the sake of your marriage. Until this side of eternity leads us over to heavenly marriage, the wedding feast, on that happy day. Thank you. Any questions or burning things you wanted to share? No? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how can we show that a sacramental marriage is better than living together? How can that come across? Because if people living together sort of have the security of that, so how can we stand out?
Wow, okay, how can you show that sacramental marriage, actual marriage, is better than just living together? Because it's safer, right? Oh, so I think trust is the big, I think, word with that. Why not live together and make sure that it's right before you get married? Because wanting to live together in the same space while acknowledging if it doesn't work out, we can just walk away. It's not trusting that person, and it's wanting to know them in all the easy ways you can. You know, owning a dog together, sharing the bed together, but you're not really trusting that person. You're not loving that person for who they are, because you don't really love them. You don't really love them if you can't love them enough to say that I'm going to commit my entire life to you, not knowing how it's going to work out. So maybe living together first is all about false certainty, but true love and commitment is about saying that I trust this love enough that I don't know how it's going to work out, but I trust this is commitment. So yes, truly loving the person and truly trusting the person. I don't know if it makes sense or not, if that's what I got. Any other cues? Okay. God bless you. God bless you. Thank you for watching.
There's a button to push. Stop.
I think we're good.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like nothing's happening.
I'm still recording. Wait. Wait. I know. Are we still recording out there? I can't tell if we're still doing this on X. Do I do this?
It looks like it would kill it.
Turn the volume off.
I think you're, well, thank you, everybody.
Are you sure you want to stop? Yes.
Yes.
Hit the X. Yes.
Yes.
I must be dead.